Chairman, we're live.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Local Government Pension Scheme Board of Friday the 11th of October. Excuse me. The meeting, as people will be aware, is being held electronically, so it allows members of the public to join to watch if they so desire. To indicate a wish to speak, could I ask that members use the raise hand function, which you'll find on your screen, and at the end of each debate item we will take a vote using the chat function, using either for, against or abstain, and I will declare the result after each vote. I'd also remind members that we will be taking a 15-minute break every 2 hours should the meeting go on after that. And the break will be taken after a speaker in the debate has finished, or if we're voting after the vote. So without any further ado, I'd open the meeting. And is Tracy with us? Because I understand that Tracy Doyle is joining us for the first time as the employer standing substitute for the schools and academies.
She hasn't arrived yet, Chair.
She hasn't arrived yet. Okay, we'll welcome her should she manage to get here. Okay, I would then like to invite the members of the board. Sorry, members has a different connotation in this. Those attending the meeting to introduce themselves. If we start with the employer reps, Jolyon.
Good morning, Chair and everyone. I'm Jolyon Adam. I'm the employer rep for the schools and academies, Paul.
Okay. Sarah Ansell.
Good morning, I'm Sarah Ansell. I'm an employer representative from the University of Hertfordshire.
James Kidd.
Hi there, I'm James Kidd and I'm the employer representative from Hertfordshire Constabulary.
And Adam Mitchell.
Hello, I'm Adam Mitchell. I'm the Vice Chairman and a County Councillor in Stevenage.
Right, we'll go on to the employer standing subs. Tracy, we're waiting for Terry Hone.
Yes, Councillor Terry Hone. I'm a substitute for the Herts County Council.
Okay, Brian Kane.
Oh, good morning, colleagues. I'm Brian Kane, substitute for Watford Borough Council.
Okay, and Rob McCarthy.
Good morning. I'm representing the Hertfordshire Association of Parish and Town Councils, of which I'm chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And on to the member representatives, Jack Byford.
Morning, everyone. Hi, Jack Byford, members representative and current HCC employee.
Okay, Gail.
Morning, I'm Gail Johnson. I'm a retired accountant and a pensioner member of the scheme.
Okay. Tim.
Good morning, everybody. Tim Perkins, retired Chief Officer of Abbots Langley Parish Council and now a happily retired member.
Okay, and the member standing subs, James Hurley.
Good morning, James Hurley, deferred member of the scheme, retired accountant.
Okay, and Sharon.
Morning, I'm Sharon. I'm a deferred member also as a former employee of the University of Hertfordshire.
Okay, thank you very much. Having distinguished between employer and member reps, I should perhaps have declared that I'm a member rep, being a currently retired ex-employee of Hertfordshire County Council and the Police and Crime Commissioner. On then to declarations of interest. Does any members have any financial or pecuniary interest relating to items on the agenda today? Give you a moment, but I will take the lack of any hands being raised as being no. Okay, then on. Oh, sorry, have somebody waiting in the lobby. Teresa, perhaps you could. The minutes of the last meeting. The minutes of the last meeting held on the 4th of July 2022. Hopefully you've all had these and had a chance to read them. Are we content that they be signed as a correct record of the meeting? Please note via chat. Okay, that item is agreed. Actually, that brings me on to one other person that we've forgotten, Teresa Baker, who always remains in the background in these meetings. She does all the organising and everything. Teresa, do you want to briefly introduce yourself, explain your role?
I'm Teresa Baker, Democratic Services Officer for Hertfordshire County Council, and one of my the pension board is one of the meetings I'm assigned to. My job is to make sure that everybody attends and everything's quorate and that basically everything happens as required.
Try to make sure I at least look as if I know what I'm doing some of the time.
Yeah.
Okay, item 2 then is the pension fund draft audit results. I've got on my order paper that Natalie is going to be speaking to this one. Natalie.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, everybody. So I'm Natalie Clark, Senior Manager for EY, and I'm here today as your external auditors. I'd like to just update you on the status of the pension fund audit for 21-22. And I'll just go through a couple of points at very high level, and then I'm happy to take any questions. So I refer to you at page 6 of the report, which is page 22 of the agenda pack. And just to note that we're well progressed in a number of areas of the audit for this year. And this page just sets out a few areas which we're working with the pension fund to close down this month and probably sort of through to November. I think the main point just to draw your attention to in this report is a new risk that we've identified during the course of this year's audit, which is in respect of the transfer of membership data from the old system Altair into UPM. As we've noted in the report in a couple of places, we've held lots of meetings over the last few months and had various iterations of reports out of the system. This has sort of allowed us to get to a position where we're content that the systems have been reconciled and then allowing us to complete some testing in respect of this. These samples have now been selected and the pension fund are well underway with completing this testing. This we're expecting to complete by the end of October for us to then review through the beginning of November. And these timetables have been agreed with the pension fund. I think we're all working to sort of towards a common goal with this. I think that's the key stumbling block that we've probably had through this year's audit, which has been slightly out of control of the pension fund officers. So we thank you for their time and effort to get us to this point and to be able to report with no significant findings to date on the audit, which is a really great place to be. I won't talk in much detail about anything else. The report sets out the standard risks that we would present on an annual basis, and we don't have anything to bring to the attention of the board in respect of these at this time. There will be an updated report once we conclude these final areas, and I'm sure this will be circulated to this group at that time. So I'll stop there and happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Natalie. Any questions from anyone? Gail.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Natalie. So could I ask now, are you likely to be modifying any aspect of the report that you've made? The report actually was quite, I found it a bit scary, really, some of the things that you were saying. You were saying that you hadn't provided a draft audit report and you hadn't said that you were intending to, you thought you would be able to issue a clean audit report. Are you now feeling slightly less nervy about this particular topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think at that point in time, as we were still reconciling the position out of the two systems, we were reluctant to issue a draft report, subject to the clearance of that testing, hopefully at the end of this month or into the beginning of November. We should be in a position, if that all goes according to plan, to issue an unqualified opinion on the pension fund.
Well, that's very good news. Could I just ask then, because I felt there was a difference in emphasis in your report and what the officers had responded with. You were talking about reconciliation attempts. They were saying there was a single figure that was the reconciling item, which was, joiners, leavers after the cut-off had been taken. Why was this? Did you say there was attempts at reconciliation?
Yeah, so I think over the last few months, there have been some differences in the reports that we've been provided with to get to sort of what we've agreed is the reconciled point. I guess these things happen in system transfers, and I think the pension fund have responded accordingly and provided all of the information that we now need to move forward this. I think it just took a little bit longer than we would have liked.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I could perhaps remind members that we do have a representative from LPPA speaking to us later. We might want to raise that question with them about the problem on the reconciliation. I have a hand being shown by Jolyon.
Hi, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I kind of share Gail's thoughts when I read it. The sense you get from it is, yeah, there was points in there saying this is a concern, we can't issue a report. But then when you read the fund's response, it feels like it's saying, yeah, this is okay, it's in hand. So I'm sort of relying on the probably appreciate the timing difference between when the reports are written and issued and then a response. So it's sort of somewhat falling between the cracks, but assuming everyone's saying it sort of is in hand and it's okay. There is one specific bit I wanted to just ask a question on. It's page 28 of the agenda pack. There was a concern around the equity insurance protection sort of valuation. And it was really the last sentence of that, which was saying, without information available for our expert over the inputs to provide the audit team with assurance over the valuation, we would not be able to issue an audit report. So it's another area that was saying, if we don't get this, it's going to be difficult for you to actually issue an audit report. I suppose two questions on that. One, and I appreciate it's a very technical and complicated area, but my understanding of the equity protection insurance was that it's insurance to kind of protect against the risk. But if you're tracking back to 31st of March, presumably we know what the value of those equities were and whether the insurance was needed or not. So I might be misunderstanding it, but I was sort of thinking that maybe wasn't as hard as all that. But then the second point about, are you going to be able to get that to a position that you are content, given the nature of it, that it's not going to be a deal breaker going forward just because the fund's got this insurance?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, you hit the nail on the head straight off to say that it's quite technical. So I think we have our specialists as well as the pension fund having their own specialists to look at this. We've obviously got comfortable for 21-22 based on the values and the information that's been provided and the work that our specialists have done. And we're already in conversation with the pension fund and their specialists, including Mercer, on what we will be able to obtain going forwards. So I think it's well in hand, and there'll be information out there that Mercer, I'm sure, can provide alongside insight to support the position. I think what we wanted to do was flag just a future concern is if it gets any more complicated and any more bespoke in terms of its approach, that it just makes it more difficult to find external tradable information that we can sort of pin the inputs and assumptions onto.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody putting you on the spot, Patrick, did you want to respond to that at all? Probably no.
No, I can. At the pensions committee meeting, we explained that we will be working with the auditors post-audit to go through the evidence that they require in order to verify the pricing for next year. So we'll work with our consultants and the auditors and their technical specialists to make sure that we're in the right place and that they can get the evidence they require for next year's audit. The intention is not to make this any more complicated, but the nature of these instruments that we're using to put the equity protection across the equity portfolio, they are complex, and there is not bespoke, but there is market pricing around these that is available. So I'm quite sure that we'll be able to satisfy the auditors' needs going forward.
Thank you. I think I'm right in saying that the deadline's the end of November. Is that correct, for the audit to be completed?
Yes, that's correct. It is obviously subject to the completion of the Hertfordshire County Council audit at the same time. Yeah.
Indeed. Any other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any. I understand, Natalie, that you're going to be leaving us now. Have work to do on the audit.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for that. I'll ask people to vote using the chat function, please. I perhaps should have said that the vote is that the pension board notes the pension fund draft audit result reports. Okay, that concluded, and we are all happy to note that report. On then to item 3, which Rob, I believe you are going to present, which is the response to the draft audit results report.
That's correct. Thank you, Chairman. So I'm Robert Winterton. I'm the Finance Manager at Hertfordshire County Council for the Pension Fund. I wasn't going to go into too much detail with the report that's in the agenda pack, but I just wanted to respond to Natalie's point on the membership data transfer from the old Altair system to UPM. So as she says, we've now concluded the reconciliations and have been provided with a list of 70 samples which they require. I can confirm that we've now received that from the LPPA, and I am working through all of the evidence they've provided to make sure it would satisfy the auditor's needs. So currently working on that, but we're definitely on target for the end of October to get this sample data back to EY. That's all I was really going to mention, but happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions or comments from anybody? Julian.
Hi, Rob. Just a quick one. I know in the report it says that the pension fund accounts obviously go into the HCC accounts, and therefore there is a risk about them being signed on the end of November. Is there any option to get the pension fund accounts signed separately? Because I know an extract goes in the main HCC accounts, but they do exist as their own annual report and accounts. If they were in a position to be signed, could that be done?
I'm not aware that that could be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as I know, they need to be signed together, but I can confirm that and come back to you. Or I don't know if Patrick has a definitive answer.
I don't. Maybe we shouldn't have let the auditor go so soon. Should have answered the question. I'm not sure. My understanding is that they both have to be signed off because the fund accounts form part of the county council's accounts, and you can't sign one in isolation from the other. That's my understanding, but we can check.
Yeah. I'm fairly sure you're right. You couldn't sign the county council accounts without the pension fund. Whether you could sign the pension fund without the county council might be an option.
Yeah.
Okay. James Kidd was indicating.
Yeah, just following on from that. So obviously from our point of view, we'll need the EY's sign off in our audit to satisfy our auditors that the pension fund is correct. So do you know if they'll be willing to provide that before they've finally signed it off, or will they have to wait for the HCC accounts to be finished in order to provide the assurance to our auditors?
Thanks, James. I believe we'll need to wait for the HCC to be signed off, but I think Phil's just put his hand up.
Yes. Phil, do you want to
bring Phil in?
Jump in there.
Good morning, all. For the accounts, as Patrick and Rob have said, HCC accounts have to be signed with the pension fund. However, for yourself, James, the IAS 19 letters that you need assurance for your auditors will be going out before the November deadline. I've had discussions with Natalie regarding this, and they're happy to sign the IAS 19 letters before the audit's complete.
James.
Right, yeah, thank you. That's great. Thanks, Phil. And I just wanted to note my thanks to the team because I know that there's huge backlogs in the audit sector. So to get it more or less over the line before the deadline, we're not even starting until January. So massive congratulations and thanks to the team and to Natalie. I should have said while she was still here.
Yeah. I may be sticking my neck out here, but I think there's a pretty good chance you'll get the letter before January. Any other questions or comments? No, in that case, the recommendation is that the report to the draft audit results for the pension fund be noted. Can you? Okay, the voting's concluded and we have agreed to note that. Okay, on then to item 4, which is the pension fund statement of accounts, and this is Phil. Philip.
Thank you, Chair. So members of this board will be happy to know that the pension fund increased by 286.3 million over the financial year 21-22, which was an increase of 4.4% investment return for the year. However, this was lower than the benchmark of 4.8%. In the report, table 4.3 shows how this increase of 286.3 million is comprised. The first bold line, the 20.1, shows that the cash flow is still positive, i.e. members' contributions are greater than the outgoing payments to pensioners at the moment. There was a question from members of this board at the previous meeting regarding management expenses. 4.5, which is agenda pack page 62, shows the increase from 18.7 to 24.1 on management fees. And the main two items that drove this increase was the 1.1 million increase in LPPA administration costs due to the new service contract, and there was an increase of 3.4 million in property fees. The reason for this increase between years is because the investment was only made in 2021 in December of that financial year. Only 1 quarter of expenses went through that account, so it's been compared to 4 quarters the whole year for the 2021 accounts. Item 4.8 of the report has a table which summarises the investment assets and liabilities between financial years and the change between these. The majority of the changes can be explained by either the increase in assets under management, transfers between asset classes, which are shown in 4.11 below. Some of the negative positions, such as unitised insurance policies, is due to the transfers out. Then the derivative contracts is also because CBRE, which hedges our currency for the global property mandate, obviously sterling fell against the euro dollar, which has turned those derivative contracts into liabilities. Final item of this report is 4.12, cash deposits held with the fund custodian, which decreased from 79.9 million to 65.4. The main item I was going to explain on here was the decrease of 16.4 million the M&G mandate. The reason for this was we had a capital call of 16.4 million on the 1st of April 21. For those capital calls to go through, they need cash 2 days in advance. So we provided the cash on the 30th, which was in the 2021 accounts. As it was called on the 1st of April, that cash has been withdrawn and is reflected in the accounts as an asset. I'm happy to take any questions.
Right. James Hurley. I think it's James Hurley. It says James Guest on my list. James?
Yes. Thank you. On the point of the 3.4 million increase in pooled property costs, are they a one-off increase, or will that be a base increase? And is it something that was built into the budget, or was it higher than anticipated? And was there any compensating reduction in other costs?
I think we've got 3 questions there. Phil, are you going to take them?
Yep. So the 3.4 million increase shouldn't happen this year because obviously for this year's accounts, the 22-23 accounts, it'll be comparing 4 quarters against 4 quarters in 21-22. So therefore that large increase shouldn't happen because obviously we have 3 additional quarters in this report. Regarding budget, we don't actually budget for these fees because obviously this is taken out net of our return. Each of these managers take it directly out of the asset class directly. So we don't get invoiced for any of these fees. It's only at the year end we find these out. Apologies, you have to remind me the 3rd question, James.
Yes, so I guess just trying to unpack it, is there a change in composition of investments, which means we would always face that increase in cost related to greater pooled property investments? Or is there or alongside, is there a reduction in an element of fees due to the fact that we put more into pooled property?
So this pool property mandate is mainly regarding the PRS mandate, the private rental sector. I would probably expect the fees to stay similar to this year, and the reason for that is obviously private rental sector. Each time a unit or a rental property needs to become vacant, they have to keep on renovating it to keep the upkeep of it on it. That is where these expenses are coming through. And when we bought it in December 21, in the accounts, some of the expenses actually the purchase of those properties as well. So that element will fall, but the upkeep of the properties will stay. So I would expect similar 400 to 500k a quarter expenses coming through.
Okay, Julian.
Hi, Philip. Just a quick question on the administrative costs with LPPA, because by no means anywhere near the biggest figure in the accounts, but obviously it had gone up quite a bit from 2 million to 3 million. So it's just understanding, is that we were just kind of on a very good price rate before and it's now kind of come up to more of a market rate, or are we getting kind of some different or extra service significantly?
And on this one, I'll actually ask Patrick to comment because I know Patrick's brought a paper to this in the previous board.
Patrick.
Thank you, Chairman. So the fund was in a commercial contract arrangement, the LPPA, up till about the end of 2021. We were paying a very competitive price for the service we were getting. At the conclusion of that contract, we did a review of the market to see what other providers were out there. LPPA were quite keen to keep a relationship with us, and however, they weren't prepared to go through a commercial contract tender, so they wanted to enter into a partnership with us. In summary, the marketplace is very tight. There is not many providers out there. And the decision of the Pensions Committee at the time, back in 2021, was to enter into a partnership with the LPPA. We pay a budget contribution to their overall budget. It's based on the number of members and employees in each fund. It is significantly higher than what we were paying under the commercial arrangement. It is, when you look at other peer funds, the cost per head, we're around the average now. We were paying well below the average cost per member. And I think what we're paying at the moment is reflective of what the marketplace is. Unfortunately, we've moved from a very good commercial contract to an arrangement where we're paying a lot more, but it's on a par with what you would be expected to pay in the marketplace.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments, Gail?
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask Phil about the position on the derivatives contracts? That sounds rather topical. That position reversing to a liability position at the year end, firstly, does that actually result in a cash outflow? And has the position deteriorated since the year end in light of further falls in sterling, etc.? Thank you.
So regarding the derivative contracts, from what I understand from CBRE is they are settled every 3 months. So in the report under 4.12, obviously cash has fallen on CBRE of 8.5 million. That some of that was to create a new sub-fund, but some of it was to settle some of the previous derivative contracts. I haven't seen the derivative contracts position, or I haven't looked in detail what's happened this year. But I can look at after this meeting and send an email out to confirm the position of the derivative contracts going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No. Okay. In that case, the recommendation is the Pension Board is asked to note and comment on the unaudited statement of accounts for 2021. Okay, that's then been noted and commented on. Brings us to, excuse me, item 5, which is the LPPA performance report for Q1. We've got John and possibly Rachel. Is it just yourself, John?
It's just me, Chairman. Thank you.
That's all right. Well, over to you.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. So I'm going to update the board on the Q1 performance. Obviously, that was between April and June, so I've got some further updates on how performance is looking more recently. So you may note in the report that some of the measures are not just in respect of Hertfordshire County Council members and employers. They are across all LPPA clients. They're not client specific. Just to confirm that we will be reintroducing client specific measures in Q4 after we've finished our migration over to our new pensions administration system. So anything that's contractual is client specific, but anything that we normally would share with you around some of the qualitative measures are across all of our clients. So an update on the statutory deadlines for the period. So pensions increase was successfully applied to pensioner and deferred records. P60s were issued to pensioners on time. We had a conversation about the risk of the annual benefit statements being issued by the end of August. So we did issue 88% of active members by the end of August, and we issued 98.5% of deferred members. We have agreed with the fund that we will schedule a second ABS run. So at the end of November, we will be issuing more statements to members that didn't receive them in the first. Obviously, we're hoping that reaches a position where we issue most, if not all. If not, we do have the option of doing a third ABS run. So that's the ABSs. The pension saving statements, so they were due to be issued on the 6th of October to members impacted by annual allowance. That was successfully delivered by the statutory deadline. You'll note in the report that performance for the period was impacted, and when we discussed this previously, we did draw your attention to the huge transformation program where we're changing our administration system, and we obviously called out that it would probably be a little bit bumpy for a while. We did speak to the fund about working with us to manage that transition. So we did work to some relaxed SLAs for the period between March, April and May, and obviously Hertfordshire County Council were one of those funds that were migrated to the new system back in March. I can confirm that there is an improving trend on performance since Q1. So an example being retirements active has improved from 75% to 90% in Q2. So we are seeing an improving trend, which is what we expected to see as we come out of the first phase of migration. In the past, we have given the fund visibility of overall elapsed time for processes and visibility of that concept of no break in payment. So how many retirees actually receive their first pension payment within 30 days of retiring. So we are again going to be reintroducing those measures into the report during Q4. Early indications are that the elapsed times are a lot shorter in UPM, and one of the reasons for that is because of the way that we've configured the processes. So you'll probably recall in the previous system, if we had a 5-day SLA, we were typically looking at the process on the 4th or 5th day before we were taking action. In UPM, because it's all process driven, we are effectively picking those processes up within 24 hours. We've introduced a 24-hour triage, which has obviously helped us resolve any queries quicker than we might have been able to previously. So the elapsed time, the part that's within LPPA's control, has shortened, which is positive, and we'll be able to share that information with you in future reports. The pensions help desk, we saw significant increases in wait times during the migration. So in April, the average wait time was 17 minutes. In May, it was 13 minutes. We had a number of tactical changes that we made to the help desk, the way that we redirect calls. We recruited a dedicated help desk trainer so that our web inquiry team could also be trained and manage calls coming in. We also worked with Civica, the new system provider, to help change the way that our help desk advisors navigate the system, so it was quicker for them to do what they needed to do. So since June, the average wait time has been around the 3-minute mark, which is exactly where we would hope it would be. We've got a non-contractual target of below 4 minutes and less than 5% abandoned rate. So just to give you an indication as to whether or not some of the tactical changes that we've made are going to actually manage the spike in calls when we go live with phase 2. So we've been issuing annual benefit statements to members across all of the clients that we support between July and August, which saw a 10% increase in call volumes to what our normal BAU levels would be. And we managed to maintain the average wait at around 3 minutes. When we went live with the new system in phase 1, that spike in calls was about 20%. And obviously we saw the wait times increase to about 17 minutes. So we're hoping that some of the activity that we've undertaken will manage those call spikes as we go live into phase 2. I think it's probably unrealistic to say that they'll stay below 3 minutes, but hopefully they won't spike up to sort of 17, 18 minutes again, which is where they were previously. So we're hoping that mitigates that risk in part. In terms of satisfaction scores, the help desk satisfaction scores remain at an average of between 75 and 80% satisfied, and our retirement satisfaction score is at around 70%. Our member engagement team are doing a piece of work at the moment to review some of the satisfaction surveys that we receive back from members, in particular those that have given us verbatim comments, because we would have expected that as we shorten the overall elapsed time of processes, that members would be more satisfied. But there's obviously other challenges with that retirement process, some of which may be things that are within LPPA's control, some of it may be third party. So we're just trying to understand that a little bit better, because we would have expected satisfaction to have increased. So I'll be able to update the board at the next meeting on the progress with that. Pension point registrations. So when we went live back in March with the new system, all of your members needed to re-register for the new member portal. We have seen a spike in registrations after the annual benefit statements were issued. So at the end of June, we had 14% of your active members registered. It's now at 23%. Deferred members was at 6%, it's now at 12%, and pensioner members was 18% and is now 25%. So we did see a spike as we expected, which is good, which is positive, more people registering. Last two things to mention. The first is the TPR scores, the pension regulator data scores. So you'll note in the report that the trend graph has been removed. Again, once we've migrated to the new system, we will reintroduce that so you can see the trends. The common data score for the fund improved from 95.9% at the end of March to 96.6% at the end of June. That was predominantly as a result of the fund commissioning and address tracing exercise for deferred members. So we managed to trace a lot of members that we'd lost contact with. And your conditional data score reduced from 96.5% at the end of March to 94% at the end of June. I will say that is expected at that time of year, because we're right in the middle of processing the year-end files. So when the Q2 reports are issued, you should see again an improvement in the conditional data score. I've mentioned the migration to the new system. Just to recap quickly, so nine of our clients and about 300,000 members successfully migrated between January and March this year. Between October, November and December this year, our remaining clients will migrate across. So again, that's 9 funds and 300,000 members. So by the end of the calendar year, we will be completely on the new operating platform, which will make it a lot easier for us to manage the operation and the service. It's really challenging for us at the moment doing that across two systems. There were a number of lessons learned from the phase 1 migration that we've carried forward in preparation for phase 2. There is likely to be an impact on call wait times and service delivery, but we're hoping that it's not as bumpy as phase one was. We will be reporting outside of the normal quarterly cycle to officers how things are going at our regular meetings, so that you've got early warning indicators of anything that may be impacting service. And lastly, I just wanted to comment on the valuation and overall data quality. So obviously the auditor has already spoken about the reconciliation of member data. Pleased to confirm that the reconciliation, which was comparing the data on the last day of using the legacy system to migrate into the first day of the new system, has fully reconciled. There were some questions. There was it was unclear as to what the requirements were. So what we've prepared for the auditors in preparation for next year is an audit report that will be able to track all of the movements within the fund. So we'll be able to show exactly which new starters have joined, any members that have moved from active status to either transferring out, deferred retirements. We've prepared those reports in preparation for next year. And lastly, we've been speaking to your fund actuary about the data quality following the valuation submission. We have a number of outstanding queries that we're working our way through. We have a regular call set up with both the fund and the fund actuary to prioritise those so that they're cleared in preparation for individual employer results being issued. And what we've also have agreed is that we will carry out an annual cleansing exercise with the fund actuary rather than doing it on a 3-year cycle, which will make it a lot easier to make sure that the data quality is being maintained. Thank you, Chair. I'll pause then. Happy to take any questions from the board.
Okay, Adam, you were first.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm looking at the target percentages for the processing of deaths, and the figure there is much below the target, and it's a very sensitive process. It's the sort of thing that if it goes wrong, it can end up in the sort of national press and reputational damage, etc., etc. So I'm just wondering what's being done to make sure that that is given a higher priority, and that we'll end up, when we come around next time, with a much better performance.
Adam, sorry, could you give us a agenda pack page number for that?
Yeah, okay, so no, it's agenda pack page 114.
Thank you.
And this particular item, it's 12. It's 12 of this item.
Thank you. John, do you want to comment?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so just to give you some reassurance, so the bereavement processes that we're handling, not all have got a beneficiary that are obviously awaiting a payment from the pension fund. So what the team have been instructed to do is prioritise anyone where there's a beneficiary, someone that we're in contact with. Some of those processes will be what we call final paying tax. So they're effectively making sure that we close down the record correctly and there's no beneficiary. So the instruction was that we would prioritise family members that were in contact with us. So that's the first thing. The second thing that we've done is we have made sure that that team's got full complement of staff, and that they're adequately trained to be able to handle these processes. There is an improving trend, Adam, moving into Q2, and we would expect that to see that back up to the levels that we would normally see from a KPI perspective. But just to reassure you that they are being prioritised. If there is anything where someone is waiting for a payment, we will make sure that they're handled appropriately.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Julian.
Hi, John. I just wanted to ask about the percentage of the admitted body, the annual benefit statements that went out by the deadline. So it was 88% on active members. Are there any consequences or issues with that? Do we have to report ourselves, the pension regulator or anything? Because it's an LGPS sort of statutory requirement, isn't it? But obviously we never get 100%. It always used to be 90, 98, 99 point something. But is there anything we need to do, or any sort of consequences from that?
Thanks, Julian. It's probably a question for Patrick, but I can obviously add the LPPA's perspective. Patrick, did you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I might get Taryn to just confirm my understanding, but during a year where there is a significant system change, the TPR is slightly more relaxed. Ideally, they want to know that there is some form of plan to make sure that all the ABS statements get out, which there is with the LPPA, as John's referred to in his earlier report. So there has been instances in the past where funds have failed to meet that deadline, i.e. send out any ABSs, and they have been fined by the TPR. We're not in that place. Ideally, we'd like to have got up into the 90s, and considering what we've been, the system change, I think we're in a relatively good place. Ideally, I'd like that to be a higher number. But there is a plan to address the backlog and get them out. Some of this is also dependent on employers. Some employers haven't sent data through, and John can confirm that is my understanding on that one as well. And we're not in a place to issue some ABSs for those employees that we haven't received data from employers. I'll let Taryn confirm my understanding on the TPR thing, and then I'll let John respond on the employer issue.
Yeah, I think the Code of Practice 14 says a breach will not normally be materially significant if it has arisen from an isolated incident, for example, teething problems from a new system. But we do also have the annual benefit statements that have been released in the return for the pension regulator return in November. So TPR will be aware of what number we hit for the 31st of August deadline.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. John, did you want to comment on whether you got all the employer information you needed?
Yes, so there are still some small employers that haven't submitted data to us. I think we need to be practical, I think, with what the solution is. I mean, there are some employers that are very, very small. Obviously, pensions isn't, number one priority all of the time. We're asking them to submit data in a slightly different format into a new system. So the instruction to our employer engagement team is to reach out to those employers by phone and talk them through the process and help them get the data through to us. Worst case scenario, we'll accept a secure file that we can obviously control and load into the system for them as a one-off to get us through this year, given the exceptional circumstances of a changing system. So they're small employers, and we're hoping to receive the data and process that in time for the second ABS run, Chair.
Okay, thank you. James Early.
Yeah, within the quarterly admin report on page 7, online inquiries and emails, it says that the handling time has increased to circa 70% responded to in 5+ days, and that's an increase compared to 70% responded within 24 to 48 hours. So when it says 5+ days, is it 5+ as in 6, 7, i.e. it's running over that? And is that still the current position?
Yeah, thank you, James. So yeah, before we started the project to migrate across, our typical response times were aimed to be between 24 and 48 hours. 70% of that was typically delivered, but the rest would have been delivered up to 5 working days. When we went live with the new system, we had a significant increase in web inquiries. So that 70% that didn't hit the up to 5 days could have been out to sort of 15 working days at times. Which what happened, James, was people were emailing us or sending us web inquiries. We were taking significant amount of time to respond, and which was generating the spike in calls into the help desk. So it's sort of a circular challenge for us. The position now is that most responses are out within 2 days, and worst case scenario within 5. So if there is anything that any board member gets escalated to them where they haven't experienced that, if you could flag that with the fund, and obviously we'll pick up those individual cases if there is anything like that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Couple of points or questions from me, Jonathan. First of all, having had the audit report earlier and the concerns over the reconciliation, it's comforting to hear you say we're now there. We've got that sorted. On the call answering, the telephone, do we still have information to callers on where they are in the queue or how long a wait they'd like to have?
I believe, Chair, we tell them what position they are in the queue,
Right.
I'm not sure about the time. I'll take that point away and just confirm that.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that the position in the queue is still on the IVR.
Okay, that's good. And you mentioned that there's a number of items where, because of the sort of changeover, we've got all client information rather than specific to Hertfordshire. Possibly a bit like a piece of string, but is there any reason to believe why Hertfordshire would be significantly different from that average?
Not really. I think if you're a really small fund with really low number of transactions, then the performance probably looks worse just because it's a lower number of processes going through the system. If we looked at comparable size funds, the performance is broadly similar. So just to confirm, in the report that's in the pack today, it's the help desk performance and the satisfaction scores that are not client specific. Everything else is.
Okay. James Hurley, your hand is still showing as raised. Is that a new question, or are you satisfied now?
I am, yes, thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, any other questions or comments? In that case, we will go to the vote, which is that the pension board notes and comments on the content of these appendices. Okay. Whilst we're voting on that, I'd just like to, excuse me, sneeze, no. Welcome Tracy Doyle, who unfortunately got caught up in work-related items, but has now joined us. So Tracy is a employer standing sub for schools and academies.
Hello.
Hi there, welcome. Okay, that item has been noted and commented on. That being the case, we move on to item 6, which is employer risk and governance. And Anne, I believe you're presenting this one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you all. Good morning. This is the employer risk and governance report for the quarter April to June 2022. This report provides the pension board with further detail into the employer risk function of the fund and overall fund performance, which includes information on audit reviews, treasury management, and our pension administrator's performance. In section 4.1, we have analysed scheme employers by risk categories. Red risk rated employers increased by 9 this quarter due to the influx of new admission agreement applications. This has also been outlined in Table 5, and further detail on the progress of each of these admission agreements are outlined in Appendix B. The number of employers being monitored under each risk category is outlined in Appendix A. Further detail of the red risk-rated employers is detailed in Table 3, which provides a breakdown of those 33 scheme employers in the red risk category. Just a bit further additional information in Table 3, we've had a lot of activity in employers which are in the outstanding deficits category, whereby fund officers are trying to ensure all employers with outstanding deficits are in legal repayment plans. Those conversations have been very positive, with a number of repayment plans in draft form ready for signature. The governance update in Appendix C highlights details on the external audits, as Phil alluded to earlier. Complaints and IDRPs will no longer be reported in this paper, as it will now be discussed in the LPPA's performance paper. Details of late payers and forms are outlined in Appendix D, sorry. Thank you, and I welcome your questions.
Sorry, I need to unmute myself. Any questions, Gail?
Thank you, Chair. Hello, Anne. Just coming back to the usual question about the employers where there's outstanding admission agreements and noting that there's been quite a few additional ones, could you just remind us, are there any members who are being deferred as a result of these outstanding items, or have we have managed to avoid that so far? I know it's somewhere where we have expressed concern before, and I know that it is our ultimate sanction is to defer the members in these circumstances. Could you just remind me of the position there?
Yes, thank you, Gail. This quarter we had threatened 3 employers with deferral due to breaching that delays policy of having about 3 months of non-engagement with the fund, and we threatened deferral. This quarter was particularly challenging as some of those employers had half terms and changes in their employment. However, once we threatened deferral, they were quickly to act, and we were able to avoid those deferrals.
Right, so there are no deferred members as a result of that at the moment?
No deferred members at the moment, yes.
That's fine. And also, could you just remind me, does non-engagement with the fund include the non-payment of contributions? What happens in those circumstances? Sorry, I should have looked at the policy beforehand.
No worries, that's fine. So when we have an admission agreement application, we are not able to accept any contributions into the fund until the admission agreement has been signed. So what we do is we encourage those scheme employers to hold those contributions in a secure account, ready to be transferred over upon signature.
But the cases where there's been non-payment of contributions, which you're showing as separate from the outstanding admission agreements, presumably those are organisations that do have signed admission agreements in the past but have failed to pay their contributions across. That doesn't affect that's what I was saying. Does that affect the members?
Yes, apologies.
No, that's fine. I wasn't making myself clear.
No worries. So the employers which have outstanding contributions, they don't affect the members, but we do threaten the employers that they need to pay promptly in an appropriate time frame, and we do issue fines when they are late in their contribution.
And we have quite a few new organisations in this category now, non-payment of contributions.
We do have them in this category, yes. However, in the following quarter, they have now left. So we have engaged with them, they have taken appropriate action, and they have now paid over those contributions.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you.
That's good. I thought I saw a hand raised by James, but it's been taken down.
Yes, sorry, I answered my own question. So yeah,
that's fine. That's fine. Any other questions or comments? No. Okay, well, in that case, the recommendation is the pension board is invited to comment, which we've done on, and note the content of this report. You can respond in chat, please. Okay, that has been noted and commented on. We move then on to item 7, which is the pension fund risk report, risk register report. Rob.
Thank you, Chairman. Just before I start, just wanted to confirm that I've had a reply from Natalie at Ernest Young, just to confirm that the HCC statement of accounts and the pension fund statement of accounts has to be signed together. They can't be signed separately.
Thank you.
Just to clarify. With regards to the risk register, I just wanted to really talk through the movements in the quarter April to June 2022. This is the movements is shown in table 3, which is page 155 of the agenda pack. So there's been a few movements. One risk has moved from a yellow category to amber. This is risk A2, which is investment strategy does not deliver required level of investment return. We've increased this risk following the risk register being reviewed by our investment consultant Mercer. we've come to an agreement that because of the current market volatility the world is facing, we felt that this risk needs to be increased to amber because it's likely that investment returns could be affected as we go forward. Risk B6, which is the Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we've actually reduced that risk down from amber to green. This is primarily because our exposure to Russia and Ukraine is minimal. We just have some small holdings through the LGT portfolio, which equated to 0.03% in Russia and 0.9% in Ukraine. Although Russia is still causing effects across the world, as we know, that's included within the risk A2, what I discussed earlier. So our exposure to Russia and Ukraine is minimal, so we're reducing that risk down. Then 3 other risks have moved. One risk has gone from green to amber, and 2 other risks have increased in score but remain in the amber category. This is risk C1, which is the fund is unable to contact members regarding their annual benefit statements due to inaccurate data. D3, the administration service provider does not comply with regulation, statute or procedure. And risk F3, which is project pace. All of these relate to when we were looking at the April to June period, we were worried that the ABS statements, annual benefit statements, wouldn't hit the August deadline. So we increased that risk from green to amber, which was C1. But as you've heard from John's presentation, we were fine. We hit 88%. So in essence, we met the statutory deadline. So that's all I was going to talk through on the movements in the register. But yeah, happy to take any questions.
Oh, you were on mute, Chair. I assume that was for me.
James, thank you.
So just this may be better asked later on, so do tell me if it's better answered later on. But just wanted to bring up about the situation with government bonds at the moment and whether that would appear in the risk register going forward. Happy for this to be deferred to the investment part if it's more appropriate.
Yeah, thanks, James. Yes, Peter will bring that up in his presentation later, but I don't know if he'd want to jump in now. I see you appearing.
Yeah, I think it's probably best if we cover it under part 2 because we can show you some data and talk about the broad impacts. A lot of the news in the press around pension funds becoming under stress, which they were, was the subset of the pension fund market that use LDI, which tends to be the corporate sector funds that are closed and backed by corporates. The open LGPS funds has much less use, and Hertfordshire has no use of these LDI funds. So the financial impact is far less. So that's kind of the here and now. I guess in terms of the risk, what this all comes down to is market volatility and macroeconomics, which, although very specifically on the gilt point at the moment, is swept up into broader thinking. Obviously, if we build a portfolio and a strategy around one set of risks that are prevalent at the moment, then we forget about everything else. So when we think about macro risk, we want to think about everything, which is why we're not quite so specific in the risk register.
Okay.
Lovely, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. So if we move to the vote, then on my page on my paper, unfortunately, come off the bottom of my paper. The pension board is asked to note and comment on the contents of the attached report. Okay, thank you very much for that. That has been noted and commented on. We move then on to item 8, and Taryn, I believe you're presenting this on the communication strategy update.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to provide an update on work undertaken to develop the fund's communication strategy. Officers work with like minds who are a pensions communication specialist, and have also worked with the fund's actuary to develop our draft strategy, which is attached in Appendix A. The purpose is to set out the fund's objectives and goals for communicating with our stakeholders, and is the first step in the development of a fund-specific website where a lot of these messages will be delivered from. The draft strategy has been shared with HEC's communications team, who we have met with this week for some feedback, and to ensure that we align with HEC's communication strategy where appropriate. Our initial focus will be to set out the fund's vision through a mission statement and set out some objectives which will be brought to the November committee and pension board for feedback. We're also working on the fund's communications policy, which is a statutory policy outlining how and what we communicate to stakeholders at an operational level. And a draft of this will also be presented at the November committee and board. So if you've got any feedback on the strategy, please.
Right. Any feedback, questions, comments? I mean, it is, I'll just comment, it is fairly high level, and personally it did seem fairly logical and it flowed. Nice to see there were measures proposed in place to see how effective it is. But if we are there any comments, go on.
It's the start of something that the fund needs to do to give ourselves some identity and promote the good messages and the good work that the fund is doing in terms of responsible investments, etc. So
no, I think it's good. I'm not seeing any hand. Oh, hang on. Yes, Patrick, you want to say something?
Yes, sorry, Chairman. I'd just like to add to Taryn's comments that we would probably also want to, in addition to metrics, measuring how many people are looking at the website, we'd probably want to look at establishing some focus groups just to test the quality and content of what we're putting on the website or sending out to employers and members. We had a conversation with our internal comms team yesterday, and that was very helpful in for them to get an understanding of what we're intending to do, but also to we've got to be careful about not moving too far away from the corporate identity of the county council, and if we're using branding, to make sure it's all in the same type of branding that the corporate would use as well. So there's a lot of work going on in the background that Taryn has been leading on, and this is basically the first part of extract of our journey on developing this communication strategy, and basically, as Taryn said, putting out some of the good information that we are producing. It seems to be buried in these committee reports and part 2 reports. We'll want to put out executive summaries, and also to help external parties. We get a lot of FOIs from pressure groups, some professional pensions media, and that we can then steer them to this to appropriate channels where they can find information out about the fund.
Could I venture to suggest that we amend the recommendation slightly and say that we welcome the draft communication strategy and note the content of the report? People generally supportive of that? If you are, I'll move to the vote. Oh, hang on, yeah, I'm getting a thumbs up from James Kidd. He obviously can organise himself far better than I can with these reaction things. So, okay, so the recommendation is, and the pension fund provides, excuse me, feedback on the draft communication report and welcomes and notes it. So you could vote, please. Okay, that has been welcomed and noted. Item 9, which is the draft responsible investment policy. This is you, Patrick, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The members of the board will have seen a draft RI policy that was presented to them at their last meeting, and we also presented this to committee in July as well. The attached appendix is an update, a second iteration of this RI policy, which takes on board comments that were made at committee and board. In particular, at committee in respect of two areas, 4.8 of the policy, I'll draw your attention to 2.4 of the actual cover report. And this was about putting exclusions in, and there was some discussion about within the committee in particular about excluding certain sectors, and members of the committee concluded that it was not an appropriate function of the committee to make specific decisions in respect of excluding specific industries from investment. However, they acknowledged that that they have the right to exclude in the future, but the wording has been changed within that policy. You'll see that in the italics and the paragraph in 2.4. So it basically says the committee prefers engagement over exclusion as the means to further the committee's RI beliefs. And then again, selling an asset remains an option if there is no engagement. So a lot of this is undertaken for the fund by investment managers. We will share with them this updated RI policy once it's gone through the whole approval and consultation process. The second change was in reflect, and it's highlighted under 2.5 of the cover report. It's in reflect of the net carbon when the fund would become setting a target to become net carbon neutral. Members of the committee felt that this was inflexible, and so that wording has now been changed. You will recollect that the fund has got a responsible investment work plan. This is the first work stream of 5. So developing the RI policy, we'll then look at under future work streams, setting a transition path line with various targets when we want to look at reducing the carbon within the fund, and reporting also at a meeting that you will have in, I think it's November, they scheduled this additional meeting for you. You'll receive carbon footprints of the fund and various metrics showing how the fund's carbon intensity footprint compares with benchmarks. The amendment in 2.5 is to allow further flexibility, but it also aligns with the responsible investment guidelines that have been adopted within the access pool. So that change is more reflective of what's happening within the access guidelines. 2.6 talks about the consultation process, and I highlight in 2.7 that project plan that we've got for responsible investment, and the various stages, the last one being the implementation stage, i.e. looking at asset classes and implementing those investment management decisions. So Appendix A is the RI policy. Attached also as Appendix B is a document that this is a summarised version of a document that went to County Council earlier this year in response to a petition about disinvesting from companies that were had operational activities in the West Bank of Jerusalem from the Palestinian lobby group. The fund wanted to make it clear, set out its position in respect of investment and its fiduciary responsibility. In pulling this document together, we took some external legal advice, and this document highlights the process that the fund goes through in making investment decisions, consultation with third parties, and the advice that we take. And there's a bit more detail in there around responsible investment and reporting. So that's for background purposes more than anything else, but it gives you a sense of the sort of process that the fund goes through when it's making its investment decisions, and the responsibilities of members that sit on the committee being a fiduciary responsibility. Happy to take any questions in respect to this report.
Okay, James Kidd.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. I just wonder whether we can communicate this further to members, because I think members will be quite pleased to see that we are implementing something in terms of responsible investment, or even just to include it in the statement of accounts or the annual report. I don't think that there's any mention of it unless I've overseen it. Apologies if I have. Yeah, I think it's good work, and it's something that we should be publicising if we can.
If only we had our own website.
Well, that's the purpose of the previous item in respect of communications. I'm absolutely committed to putting out this work to members of the fund and employers in particular who pay significant contributions into the fund. There is a requirement as consultation at the moment from the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities in respect of climate reporting and funds, LGPS funds from, I think it's the 1st of December 2024, will be required to produce an annual climate risk report, which includes a lot of the metrics that you'll see in the carbon reports we produce, that you'll see at the next meeting, but also about transition paths, how we manage the risk of climate on the fund. So it's going to be quite a lot of detail. Again, that there is an onus on sharing this with a wider group than just committee and board members. So the communication strategy is part of the tools that we'll use to get this information out to interested parties, but more importantly to members. I totally agree with you, James, that there's a lot of work that goes in the background that members and employers are not aware of, and so it's we'd like to get this out in the most appropriate form.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think increasingly members are caring more about this, aren't they? So let's tell them all the good work we're doing. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Patrick? No, that being the case, I think the recommendation is that we comment on the revisions to the draft RI policy, and again I'm going to use the chairman's prerogative and change it very slightly to say that we comment and note, because otherwise there's nothing in record. I think we should note the revisions to the draft policy, please. Okay, that's commented on and noted. Item 10, you again, Patrick, for the access update. You're muted, Patrick.
Yeah, just taking myself off. Thank you, Chairman. This is the quarterly report that shows all the activities that have been taking place within the access pool. The most recent meeting of the Joint Committee was due to take place on the 12th of September. Unfortunately, and these meetings take place in person. All 11 chairmen of the pensions committees attend in person, and they usually take place around Westminster. But unfortunately, the meeting was cancelled following the death of the Queen and was rescheduled for the 6th of October last week, and it took place via MS Teams because of some travel issues as a result of the train strikes. So that's a bit of background as to why the meeting didn't take place on the 12th of September. The report shows in the summary and in the early sections that 26 sub-funds have been created across what we call the liquid asset classes. These are equity and bond funds, with a total assets under management of 22 billion. There is also this additional 10 billion under Access Governance, which is passive management, and those assets are with UBS. So it's a total of 32 billion within the funds, about 55% of the overall assets under management for all the 11 funds in Access. Hertfordshire County Council holds 2.5 billion, and that's about 43%. That's fallen since the last report by about 4%, and the reasons for the fall are set out in 2.1. Primarily, it's been driven by falls in the Baillie Gifford equity funds. These are growth managers, and they've been impacted by the rise in inflation, which tends to has impacted consumer spending. So these funds have been impacted by those particular issues and the economy generally. That's not to say that all other equity funds and bond funds haven't been impacted during the same period. So there has been a general fall in assets under management within the Access pool during that quarter. If I turn to what's been going on the illiquid side, we are working with a third party, MJ Hudson. They're a specialist investment consultants, and our legal advisors, Squires, to develop what we call the illiquid solutions for the investment of property, private equity, private debt and infrastructure. The Joint Committee approved that the first illiquid fund would be a property fund. So we're going through a procurement process at the moment to appoint 2 managers for a UK property solution and a global property solution. We expect those appointments to be approved by the Joint Committee next March, and then depending on the outcome for this fund, if it's a change of manager, we'll have to go through a development of a transition plan to move those assets across to the new manager. They won't all go in one hit. It'll be over a period of time because of the significant costs that would be involved, and we will be bringing back a paper probably in March next year that gives a high level indication of those costs. Table 3 in section 5 shows the annual forecast savings from the assets that have been moved into the pool, and when we're pulling this table together, it's comparing like for like on a like for like basis. And what I mean by that is if those assets were with that manager outside the pool, what that cost would be compared to the cost with that manager inside the pool. So I'll give you an example. Dodge & Cox has come in with a saving, however, and that is because the management fees with Dodge & Cox outside the pool are a lot higher than inside. However, the cost of moving Dodge & Cox into the pool has come at a cost of about 1.9 million to the fund per year. And this is because we are moving assets from a passive manager, UBS, to an active manager where fees are a lot higher generally. And so this was a decision made by the Pensions Committee last year, fully aware that there would be a cost associated by moving from passive to active management. Section 5 also sets out the future investments that will increase Hertfordshire fund inflows into the Access pool. They will be the movement of the Blue Bay mandate, which is an item on in part 2, into the fund, into the pool. We are co-invested with 2 other funds, Cambridgeshire and West Northamptonshire, and we'll be making commitments to emerging market managers when those fund solutions are put in place. And we've asked Access to look for a quality manager as well, and they kicked off that process. So there is about £900 million in the future will be going into the Access pool. Table 4 shows the current budget. There is a current underspend of 80k, and that is primarily to do with procurement starting a bit later than anticipated. You'll also see there the primary pension activity, the business activities for the remainder of the year. Section 7 talks about a third-party review of Access. This was approved by the Joint Committee in its meeting in December. The review will cover the areas set out in Section 7.2, and is expected to conclude early next year, again with a report going to the Joint Committee in March. The review is it's nothing to be concerned about. It's we've gone through a process where the Access Support Unit has now been established for a considerable period of time, and it is a reflection piece. Do the objectives still remain the same? Does the Access Support Unit have the right resources to deliver the work that the funds are requiring over the next few years? Is the governance structure correct for the access pool? So that review is will involve stakeholders such as the chief financial officers such as myself, and chairman of the joint committee, working with a specialist consultant. Section 8 shows the Hertfordshire position of assets under management in and outside the pool, and explains again why there has been a fall in the Hertfordshire position of pooled assets. And finally, under 8.4, I referred to a local government chronicle article about pooling generally. There's some frustrations at ministerial level about the level and speed of pooling. But you'll see there that it's a useful article to read as well if you get time. The board secretary, Joanne Donnelly of the LGPS Advisory Board, has basically said we need more clarity about pooling. They would like, central government like to see pools invest more in infrastructure. We're seeking clarity around what type of infrastructure projects, what sort of commitments are you looking for? We're expecting a consultation on pooling generally towards the end of this year, early next year. So I'll provide more detail once that consultation comes back at future meetings. Happy to take questions, Chairman, from any members of the board.
Any questions? Can I start off with one?
Yes, of course.
Having moved from passive to active management of property, you noted that will be more expensive because active management is more expensive. Presumably it should be possible to measure the benefit that we gain from that as well, though.
Yes, we can. And there is a report that will be coming to the committee, I think, and board in November, December, which we call it a cost of investment management report, and it shows the active share that we retain as a fund from those additional fees we pay. And we can go into a lot more detail when that report is presented to you in due course. But you'll be able to see that where we've got active managers who have been delivering returns, how much of that return we retain after deduction of fees.
At least you can measure that way. I think it might be more difficult to measure the other way. If you moved to passive management, what active actions might you have taken? Any other questions or comments? No. In that case, I suggest that we put the motion, which is the recommendation that we note the contents of the report. Perhaps whilst we just, so that has now been voted on and noted. That on to notes of dates of future meetings. They're listed as the 11th of October, 1st of November. I just bring people's particular attention to that's an additional meeting that won't have been in your diaries from the start. The 9th of December, the 17th of March, and the 11th of July. And I'm going to put Teresa on the spot here because members may recall that the last meeting we expressed an interest in having at least one meeting a year in person, and I believe, Teresa, things were looking favourable for the 17th of March. Is that still so? Are you there, Teresa?
I am. You've caught me on the hop. Just give me a moment.
Sorry about that. That was a bit mean. I should have warned you I was going to do that.
Just check and confirm that for you. Give me a moment.
Okay, well, we don't need to know immediately, but I just reiterate my desire to have at least one meeting in person, and we'll make sure that plenty of notice is given to people for that. So we are.
Yeah, that is correct. 17th of March for in-person.
Thank you very much, Teresa, and apologies for putting you on the spot like that. So in that case, we note those dates, please. And whilst we're doing that, I will formally move that the public part of this meeting will now end, and we will enter closed session to consider exempt business. So this concludes the part 1 meeting.